Hi there, it's Sarah from Peerless Designs here, and I'm going to show you my new 3Ds acetate art. I'm going to do a step-by-step tutorial for you, so we'll run through it all and I'll show you how it actually works. It's based on a Japanese technique which what they did was paint onto resin, and each layer of resin they'd paint a bit more of the picture and keep building the resin layers up and up and up until you got a 3D effect. So obviously I want to be able to do this without the messiness of resin, and also unless you're an accomplished artist you can't actually do it with resin because you wouldn't be able to copy anything. So it's very difficult for me to show you on camera because of the glare, but this is an example of it. So this fish is built up with layers of acetate, and basically you're decoupaging it up to get the finished effect. Let me just zoom back in again, there we go. What we're going to do is I'm going to show you basically what you get in the pack, and we're going to go through it with you and show you how to do it. So this is the pack. So what you'll get in here is the pattern. So you've got on this particular design you've got four pieces of acetate which you're going to use. So you've got the first side, and then if you turn the pattern over you've got the next stage, if you like, but I'll explain that to you a bit later on. You also get 10 sheets of acetate. Now the acetate is larger than you actually need it. That's in case you want to do a larger project which requires the acetate to span, say, a aperture. But if you like, you can cut it down in half, and that will allow you to have even more. So there's enough in a pack to do 2 lots, but with the if you cut it in half you can actually get four lots out of it. But of course you've always got the pattern, so you can just get more acetate and do as many as you like once you've got the pattern. You also get in here 10 sheets of thinner card, which we're going to use to separate the layers of acetate. You will need to die cut these now, either with a die cutting machine or an electronic die cutting machine. You can also just use a knife to make an aperture. It's there purely just to separate the bits of acetate but give them a bit of structure so that they don't dip in the middle. You also get 2 of the thicker sheets, which we'll use those as the actual base for when we're stacking the decoupage up. It just gives it a bit of rigidity. Now you can leave them white, or you can put backing papers on them, or say if it was the fish you could maybe put pebbles in the background as a paper, obviously, or paint them, or you can do mixed media on it first. It's completely up to you if you experiment. Now you can use these like I have done here. That would be used as a card topper, or you could simply frame it up and use it as a piece of art. The other idea I had was maybe make a box lid, or if you open a box you've got the depth in the lid that you could stack these up, so when the box is opened either in the main part of the box or in the lid you could have this decoupaged 3D art inside, so it looks as if it's inside the box itself, so when you open it it's a surprise. There's a lot of different things you can use it for. It's basically up to you to think of different ways of doing it. But also I designed these because without using the acetate, if you just want to learn to paint, just use the steps going from 1 to 4, and then once it's dry you can do the next stages. Just to paint a picture, you know, it just shows you, if you're not very confident at painting, you can start at the beginning and copy what I have done here and use your paints, and it just shows you the layers that when you're making a painting or a piece of art, you obviously have to layer your paint up and up and up like you do in mixed media, but this shows you the separate layers that would go to make up the whole picture. So if you've just got a piece of watercolor card and want to make this picture as a painting, this pattern will also give you an idea of where to start. Okay, so that's what we've got in the kit. So I will get everything ready and we'll show you what to do. Okay, so we're going to start with our pattern, and on the pattern you'll notice that you've got 1, 2, 3, 4. On the other side you've got 1A, 2A, 3A, 4A. So we're starting with the 1, 2, 3, 4 at first. So I've got my piece of acetate. Now, as I say, you can cut this in the middle if you like, but I'm just going to lay it over the top. And what I'll do is I'll do the first one and then I'll do the second one and then put them to the side to dry. So I'm just going to get a bit of tape just to keep them so they're not going to be moving around. Okay, so we've got our acetate laid over the top. Now it gives you a list of colours. Acrylic paint we're going to be using because obviously we're going on to plastic here, so watercolours or anything like that aren't going to work. Now obviously on here you can see we've got blue, green and purple. Now the magenta that I've said to use obviously is quite pink, but if you add a tiny bit of blue to it, that will make it more purpley. And likewise with the lighter colours of the blue, we've always got our white there, so we can add in and make it a bit darker or lighter depending on what we want. So I'm going to take a medium brush. Now when you paint onto acetate, you'll find that it goes quite see-through because the acetate is very slippy. So what we'll do is we'll paint it first, and then once it's dry, if you feel that it's too see-through, you can just go back over it again and make it more dense. Because once you've got it there, you just go over it, it's quite easy. Okay, so what I'm going to do first of all, because I don't want to put my hand in it, I'm going to start at the top and come down this way. So I'm going to take a bit of the blue into the middle there and a bit of the white and just roughly mix it so it's quite marbled. And then we're just going to start at the top here and we're just going to follow the pattern. You don't have to be too bothered. I've done it as easy as I can for you, so you should still get a really nice effect. So just taper your brush as you're coming towards the end of the flower petal. So again on this side, like I say, don't worry too much it was a bit see-through because we'll just go over it again later. Okay, and this one. And then these two over here. Okay. And again, with it being acetate, if you do go over it, you can just rub it off as long as it hasn't dried. Right, you can see there, you can see that it's gone quite sort of see-through in places, and you can see the brush marks, but we're going to go over it again, so don't worry too much. And don't worry too much on the first pass about putting other colours in and trying to make it look more like a petal, because we're going to go over it. We'll do that in the second pass. Okay, so that's the blue. So now I'm going to take this same blue that I've been using, and I'll just take a bit over to the magenta and just a tiny little bit, and you see how it will go purpley. A bit more. Okay, and then we're just going to fill in the purple bit. Super. Now then we'll do the green. Just wash my brush out. Okay, I've got green, a bit of green here. Okay, so all we're doing is blocking in that colour. And on the second pass we can put a bit more detail in. Okay, that looks pretty good. So now you can see we've got your first layer onto acetate. Okay, so I'm just going to move this up now so I can do the second one. Being very careful. I mean, if you've already cut these, it's a lot easier because you can pick it up and move it to the side. But I'm just going to move this up. Trying to keep it in the same place. I'm just going to move it up so you can see. There we go. Right. Okay, you have got lines here which will help you line it up when you put it back down, because those lines represent the edge of the size of acetate that I put in for you. Okay, so on this one, again we're going to start with the blue. We've already got our bit of purple mixed up, so we should have just about all the colours we need on this one. Okay. I'm going to go for a slightly finer brush for these petals. Right, so I'm going to just mix a bit more blue into there, and we'll start here and we'll go up the top. When you're mixing your colours, don't put too much water in. Have your brush quite dry, because you're painting onto acetate, it will obviously, if your paint is too watery, it won't stick very well. So you need your paint fairly thick. So just keep mixing your colour in. Okay. Acrylic paint dries quite quickly, so when you make your palette, don't put too much paint out. Otherwise, especially if you're painting for the first time, you'll find that it dries up quite quickly and you're just wasting paint. Okay. Now these ones on this side are slightly lighter, so I'm going to put more white in. Okay. And then there's just some little blue bits here. Right, that's it for the blue. Okay, now on here, I don't know if you can see it very well, but there's some white, just little flicks of white. So I'm going to go to my fine brush and just follow them. You don't have to be too precise, it's just a sort of a hint that this is a little bit spiky, a bit like a thistle top. So we're just going to dab some little stripes of paint over the top. You can't see it much now, but when it is all together you'll be able to see it better. Okay, that's fine. And then we've got a bit of the magenta by itself. I'm just going to do a little V. There we go. And there's a couple of bits there. Okay, add a bit of white to that just to slightly change the colour. And then there's a bit of purple. Again, if you remember, we just added the blue and the magenta to make the purple colour. Okay, and these are just the little stamens that are sticking up. As I say, don't forget that these are all going to be layered on top of each other, so even though you think, oh, it looks a bit rough, the other one, a lot of it is going to be covered up, but it gives it the depth. So okay, those ones are done now, and I'm going to put those to one side to dry, and then I can go on to the next ones. Okay, so I've attached my acetate to the next pattern piece, which is number 3, and again I'm going to do exactly the same. So we're going to take the light blue and we're going to go in at the back with the larger petals. Okay, then I'm just going to add a bit of darker blue in, because those front ones are slightly darker. If it's resisting the acetate a lot, then just add, mix a bit more paint in just to make it a bit thicker. Okay. And then we've just got these two little bits at the side. I'll use a smaller brush for that. Again, make sure your brush is nice and dry so that it doesn't it actually puts the paint on the acetate better. Right, and then I can use the same brush to go into the purpley colour that we made before. Again, I'm just going to add a bit more of each of the colours just to make it a bit thicker, and just put some of these little bits in. Okay, right, so I've added a bit of like a light orange colour onto my palette. So with my fine brush I'm just going to do these they're like little arrowheads. Okay, and then I need to get some red and black for the ladybird, so let's pop a bit of red on. Black. Here we go. Okay, I need a tiny amount of these ones. Right, so let's go in and do the red for the ladybird. You can see it resisting a bit there because I had some water come through. Must have travelled down my brush. Okay. Again, we are going to be going over this, so don't worry too much. Right, and then with my fine brush, I'm going to just pop in the black. Try and get a nice point. Okay, so his head. 1, 2, 3. So that's pretty simple. Oh, actually, I've just seen I've missed out those little white bits there. Hang on 1 second. Just the top of the stamens. Just 2 little white blobs. So you can see that each step it's not very detailed. It's nice and simple just to block the colour in. We've got this one now which we can go down to. And the nice thing is, because acrylic paint dries quite quickly, hopefully by the time I've done this, it will the first ones will be dry. So let's just pop in some more blue. This one is, this centre bit's a bit darker. Okay. And at the end of the day, you want it to look painted, because the whole point of it is you're painting it yourself, so you don't want it to look like a photograph. You want to be able to see some brush marks. Right, so I've got a brown here as well, which I need to just pop a little tiny bit of brown. You can make if you're used to colours and painting, you can make these colours yourself if you haven't got everything you need. Blue and red will make a brown colour, so but I've got some burnt umber here, so I'll just use that. Okay, so this is just 3 little pointy bits. There we go. And then the red of the butterfly, I was going to call it then, the ladybird. Okay. Okay, that's it. As you can see, this comes together quite quickly. It's not a time-consuming hobby that's going to take you forever to complete. It does come together quite quickly. So I'm going to pop those ones to one side so I don't smudge them, and we're going to bring the first ones back and have a look and see if they need to be made a bit denser or not. Okay. Okay, so I've brought my original piece back in now, and what I'm going to do is put a blank piece of paper down. Let me just move this over so you can see the original next to it, so I can see now where there's any blank parts that need maybe filling in a bit more. So you'll find that this layer will be a lot easier because you're actually going on to paint rather than onto the acetate itself. So if you look at the pattern, you can see that the centre of these leaves is a lot lighter. So what I'm going to do is just get some of the blue but put some white into it so it's lighter than what we've already put down. Again, don't mix it too much, make it, if I can bring this in a bit, make it so it's quite marbled, and that gives you a nicer effect. It won't be so blocky. Okay, and all I'm going to do is just go over the top of the original, just to get rid of any of these really see-through bits. Bring it down. Okay, there's a bit over there. And because I'm using a lighter colour, it also gives it a bit more depth. Okay, same with this bit. A bit over here. And this one here. Got a bit. Get off. Okay. Maybe just that bit there. So you can sort of look at the pattern and think, okay, that bit's a bit lighter there. Obviously, because you've now painted, you can't really put it back on because you won't be able to see through it. But you only need to just darken it up a bit, just to make it a bit more dense so that you can't see through it quite so much. In the later layers, it doesn't matter so much because you're seeing through it anyway, but on this one, on the first layer, then you want it fairly dense. Okay, let's add a bit more white to that. It's gone a bit too pinky, and a bit more blue. Sorry, you can't see the... Oh, whoops. Trying to get it so you can see the actual colours that I'm mixing here. So yeah, the blue and the magenta will make it a purpley colour. Okay. Move that out of the way. It's better. Right, and then finally I'll just pop a little bit more of the green just over it. Just I'll add a bit of white this time, and then to the green, just to make it a bit lighter so that it's just slightly different colour. And then round the edge there where it's gone a bit light. Maybe a bit more white. So it's just strokes, it's not, we're not being too particular. Okay, so that now has made that less see-through, and what I'll do is I'll move this up and I'll do the same with this one as well. I'll just go over it. The white bit's okay, it's just this blue bit here that I just slightly, where you can see that you can see the white paper through. I'm just going to make that a bit thicker there, just to give it a bit more depth. Okay, I'll do that and then we'll come back. Okay, so I've gone ahead and done all 4 pieces, just made them a bit denser, and now we're going to move on to the next stage of the pattern. So all I'm going to do is turn my pattern over. So we've got the 1A to 4A, and this time, rather than laying it over the top, because again I can't really see through it, I'm just going to pop it next to it. There are only subtle changes on the second pass, the third pass really, so it's quite easy just to see where they are, and we're just going to put in a few details. So this time it doesn't matter so much how much water you've got on your brush, because we're laying the paint on top of paint. You'll find that it does go on a bit easier. So sorry about the glare, it's a bit difficult with it being acetate to photograph it. So if we have a look here, we can see mainly on the petals there's a bit more white, so I'm just going to go into the white and just put a few highlights of the white to get a bit more water. Okay. A bit more paint on my brush, again on this side. As I say, you don't have to be too precise, especially the first time you do it. Just, you know, have a play. It's not, I've made the pattern as easy as possible. There isn't a massive amount of detail, but you'll find that when we decoupage it later and 3D it up, it all adds up and makes a really nice painting. Okay, so we've got some white on there. On here as well, on the main body of the stalk, there's a few white bits, or lighter green bits I should say. So I'm just going to add some, just trying to see if I can bring the paint in without smudging it. Just added some white to the green here, and I'm just going to put a few brush strokes down like that, literally 4 strokes, and then a bit more white, and we're just going to give the impression of texture here with a few blobs. Okay, that's all you need to do. And then on this bit here, let me just wash my brush out. There's just a few darker hints, so I'm going to get the magenta and the blue again, and just a bit more blue this time, just to make it slightly darker. And literally just 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's it. So it's really nice and simple. And that's your first layer done. So now we're going to move it up and go to the second layer. Again, just look at the pattern and think, okay, there's not a great deal difference on this one. So I'm just going to darken up a few parts. Let's just wash out that purple. So I'm going to go in with the blue, just put a couple of darker stripes on this one, strokes rather, on this bit here. Just on this pass, just neaten up the edges of your petals if they're a bit rough. Okay, and that's a slightly darker petal there, a bit more blue. Okay, you're just putting a bit more texture in really, and once I've put some darker ones in, I'm going to put some lighter ones in as well with the white. There's also, on this one, there's also a couple of little ends on these stamens. So let's see, just put a bit of white and a bit of the purple, just blobs, doesn't have to be anything major, bit of a blob there. Okay, let's darken that up slightly. You can use your own license to do whatever you want on these as well. It's just, you can do them any colour you want. You don't have to have these petals blue, you can have them red or whatever you want really. It gives you the basis to create your own ideas as well. Right, so I'm going to go in with the white now, and just on the blue again, just put a few little strokes just to give it a bit more interest. Don't forget these bottom ones are actually, a lot of it's going to be covered up, but you'll still slightly see it through from the top layer. Alright, I think that's pretty good. I've just put my hand in the blue paint. Yeah, I'm quite happy with that. I'll just, tiny bit of purple, I'll just layer there underneath those little purpley bits. And that's it for those two. So again, I'm going to put that to one side and we'll go on to the next ones. Okay, I'm on to the next one now, and on this one you can see there's hardly any difference between the two. There's a couple of black spots, a white spot for the eye, and maybe just a little bit more detail in these flowers, so in these petals. So I'm just going to get a bit of white and just do a few little strokes. Nothing major. Just tidy the edge of that petal up, and the same with that one. And then slightly darker okay, just a little bit more lighter colour, just to add a bit of interest on these petals here. A bit of the darker purple just on these little stamens and on here. Right, that's fine. And a bit of white. And we're just going to put the eye in for the ladybird, and if you look, there's just a stroke of white there just to give the impression of light, and everything else is pretty much the same. There's just two little tiny purpley bits there which I'll just do two blobs. There you go. Yeah, happy with that. So we'll move on to the next one. Again, the only difference here is the black spots, a bit of white and some white on the leaves. So let's just get the white. Okay. Bit of white on this bit as well. Tiny bit of white there. Right, bit of black. Now there is a slightly darker red colour here, so what I'll do is I'll get some of the red. Just bring this in so you can see. Oops. Get some of the red and just a teensy bit of black just to make it slightly darker, and just put a shadow here. It's only a line, doesn't have to be much, and a line there and a little bit there, that's fine. and then we'll go straight into the black to do the spots. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Actually, I missed the spots on the top ladybird as well. There's 2 spots on the top ladybird. So 1, 2. Okay. I think that's it pretty much. Just tidy this up a little bit. My brown paint, I think, has just about had it. Right, there we go. They're all done, so I'm going to put those to one side to dry. Okay, so my 4 images now are dry, and I have cut them into the 4 separate pieces. So the fun bit now is to put it all together. But as I'm looking at the acetate, I notice that there's quite a few fingerprints on it, and once you come to put it all together, you're not going to be able to get to the bits underneath. So I've just got a glass cloth here, and I'm just going to lightly go over so that hopefully there's no fingerprints going to show through once we put it all together. Okay, if you sort of angle it in the light, you can see where they are. Right, that should be fine. Okay. Right, so what I've done is I've gone ahead and cut my apertures out of the thin card that you've got. Now, like I say, you can either cut them small like we have done here and put 2 apertures on one piece, or you can keep them at the A5-ish size and just put 1 aperture in the middle. It's completely up to you. You're not really going to see these bits, so you could actually just cut a square in the middle and just have the outsides, or the same with the smaller ones, just a small square. All it's doing really is separating the acetate. But the thickness of the card is just enough to keep it separate. So what we're going to do is I'm using an oval on this design, so before I cut the aperture out, I just checked that there's going to be enough to still attach the acetate, but I want to be able to see the image. So I've gone ahead and cut 4 sheets of this. Okay, we also, in the pack, we also get a thicker board. Now, if you're making a greetings card, then I would use just one of the normal backing sheets. But if you're going to make it into something a bit more substantial or a piece of art, then this backing board is ideal for that, because it's going to keep it really strong. But before we put it onto the backing board, because I might decide once I put all the layers together, I'm going to try different backing papers and different colours behind it, just to see if it makes any difference. You could maybe try mirror card or something to really bounce the image back. So I'm going to leave that board just for the moment. I've got them in order, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm just going to move these other ones out the way for the moment, trying not to get too many fingerprints on. I might just give them another wipe over before I come to put them together. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my first board, I'm going to pop that down first, and then I'm going to pop this on top of it, and with a bit of tape, I'm going to tape it down. Okay, so I'll use some double-sided tape just around the aperture. This is where it's easier if it's straight rather than an oval. Okay, I want to go all the way around with this to make sure that it's really going to hold on to the acetate. Right, let's take all these bits off. Last one. Okay, so just going to check it, make sure there's no major fingerprints. Now we're going to layer it up with the paint side up, because that's where the detail is. So I'm just going to pop that on there like so. Okay, so that's your first one done, and you can see already as you lift it away from the backing it gets a shadow underneath it, so that's what creates the depth as well. Right, so we're going to pop another piece on now. So if we just get some tape on the edges for this time. You don't need to use spacers on this, you know, like the foam, the 3D foam, because it doesn't need that much depth behind it. Okay, take these bits off. I think actually I'll just put a couple of bits here as well at the edges. Okay, and we're going to put the next piece down. Now get right on top of it and look down so you can line it up. We can trim the edges later on if it's not exactly the same all the way around, we can trim it down. Okay, so now you've got a piece sandwiched in between two. So now we're going to get the next layer. So again I'm going to tape all the way round. Okay, so just before we put the next layer on, just give it a little clean up in case there's any fingerprints. Right, again we're going to pop the next layer on and we're going to look at it, really hover above it, get it lined up before you put it down. Okay, that's the next one. Alright, so again we're going to put another spacer in between. Okay, so we've put that part on. Now we're going to put the next layer on. Okay, so this layer will sit here. Okay, so we're going to again put the tape on. Okay, so we're ready to put the last piece on. Let's just give this a little wash over. Right, so the last piece is the other wing of the ladybird. Okay. What I'm going to do now is with a piece of just clear acetate, because the paint is on the top, if you just leave it like that, there's a chance maybe it could get scratched, especially if you're making it into a card. So I'm just going to give that a clean. I'll make sure that both sides of this are clean. And I'm going to just put a layer, another layer over the top so that it protects the paint. So let me just put some tape across here. Okay. Let's take the top off this. Right. Then that will just protect the paint. Okay. Right, so what I've done is I've done another aperture, but very slightly smaller, so that it hides all the other bits. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to trim down the white at the back just to make it fit a bit better. Yeah, I'll just neaten all these edges off now. Okay, so I've cut it down just to neaten it off a bit, and I've taped up round the edges, and now I'm going to put the outside mount on, just lining up so it covers the inside so you won't see it. Okay. Okay, I've still got to trim a bit off there, but that looks pretty good. So I don't know if the camera will get in close enough to show you the depth that you're getting there. Okay, so now we've got to decide what backing we want to put on it. So when we put the backing on, it will give you that shadow, which is really nice. If you wanted to, you could stand it off even more. Sometimes it's best just to leave the backing white, which obviously makes it shine out more. Or you could actually leave it see-through, so that if you hung it in a window, you could make like a sun catcher type of thing, so the sun shines through. You'd have to put a mount on the other side as well, but that's another idea that you can use it for. So let me just get some different coloured card and we'll just have a look. Let's see, actually the bit we've taken out of there we could put behind it, but I think that's a bit too busy. You lose the depth quite a bit. That's not too bad, but again I think it would have to be something quite subtle or just a plain colour. Let me go and find some colours. Okay, I've gone and found some different bits of card here, so I'm going to try each one behind. I have the feeling that a dark one's not going to give the effect, so this is a grungy scrapbook page here. Now that one actually looks quite nice. I don't know if you can see that. That does look quite nice behind it, so I'll put that to one side. The blue one's nice, but I don't think it really goes with the green that well, although it does go with the flower. The brown one I think is too dark. The craft one, it doesn't really look right. No. You could try Miri. Miri would really stand out in the background if you wanted to. I've got some pearlescent card here, some blue. That's actually quite nice, the pearlescent. There's a green. Now that is quite nice as well because it's quite a light, bright green. It doesn't darken it up too much. I've actually got a piece of backing paper here, which I really quite like actually, because it's quite light but it's giving a texture in the background which, although it's only very small, it doesn't detract too much from the flower. Yeah, or there's just plain white. I think actually, out of all of them, I think I like this little grungy piece the best. So I'm just going to cut that. Okay, when it comes to the last layer that we're going to stick to, it's best to use 3D pads, because you'll find that this will give it a shadow which will make it even more 3D. So just on the last layer we're going to put some 3D stickers. There we go. take the backs off. Okay, and then that just gives it a shadow. If you can, I don't know if you can see the shadow, but there's a shadow now on the very last layer, so that really makes it stand out a lot more.